Right now, there's a metal shortage that could shut down the entire tech industry. Not lithium, not cobalt, silver. For the 5th year in a row, we've used more silver than we mined. 820 million ounces gone. And now AI data centers need 3 times more silver than regular data centers. UBS just calculated we need 500,000 tons by 2030. We can't produce that much, not even close. Silver hit $93 an ounce yesterday on 14th January 2026. It was $20 4 years ago. And Switzerland's biggest bank, UBS, is quietly panicking. Now, let me tell you what happened in the last 14 days that changed everything. UBS, the largest bank in Switzerland and one of the most powerful financial institutions in Europe, just issued an internal risk assessment to its commodity desk. And according to sources who have seen this document, the bank is facing a physical silver shortage that they cannot solve through traditional market channels. They need metal. They need it now. And they cannot find it at current prices. Now, before you think this is just another bank having a bad week, you need to understand what UBS actually is. This is not some regional credit union. UBS manages over $4 trillion in assets. They are one of the primary bullion banks that facilitate precious metals, trading for central banks, sovereign wealth funds, and major industrial corporations across Europe. When UBS has a silver problem, it means the entire European precious metal supply chain has a silver problem. And right now, that problem is getting worse by the day. Here's what we know from multiple sources inside the Swiss banking system. UBS has contractual obligations to deliver physical silver to clients. These are not paper contracts that can be cash settled. These are allocated storage agreements where clients pay for specific bars to be held in specific vaults under their name. And when those clients recently asked to audit their holdings or take delivery, UBS had to admit they have a gap. The metal that was supposed to be sitting in their Zurich vaults is not there in the quantities they promised. Now, let me be very clear about what this means. This is not a margin call. This is not a trading loss. This is a failure to deliver physical metal that clients already paid for. In the precious metals world, this is the nightmare scenario. Because once word gets out that a major bank cannot deliver allocated metal, every other client with allocated storage starts demanding audits. It creates a bank run. But instead of people lining up for cash, you have wealthy Europeans and institutions demanding their silver bars, and UBS cannot produce them. So where did the metal go? There are 3 possibilities, and none of them is good. Possibility 1 is that UBS used client-allocated silver as collateral for other trades without permission. This would be illegal. Possibility 2 is that the metal was leased out to short sellers who sold it and now cannot buy it back to return it. This would be a delivery failure. Possibility 3 is that the inventory records were simply wrong and the metal was never there to begin with. This would be fraud. Pick your favorite disaster. However, this is where the story shifts from a Swiss banking crisis to a global supply emergency. While UBS is scrambling to find silver to cover their allocation shortfall, a demand tsunami is building that makes their current problem look like a rounding error. The artificial intelligence industry just published revised forecasts for silver consumption through 2030. And the numbers are so large that even the people who wrote the report do not believe the supply exists to meet them. According to a joint analysis published by the Silver Institute and research firms tracking the AI build-out, the artificial intelligence sector is projected to consume 500,000 metric tons of silver by 2030. 500,000 tons. Let me put that in perspective for you. Global silver mine production in 2025 was approximately 26,000 tons. The entire above-ground stock of investment-grade silver, all the bars sitting in vaults worldwide, is estimated at around 1.3 million tons accumulated over decades. And the AI industry alone needs 500,000 tons in the next 4 years. Do the math with me. If AI needs 500,000 tons and annual mine production is only 26,000 tons, that means AI demand alone would consume 19 years worth of current global mining output. 19 years of production needed in 4 years, and that is just AI. That does not include solar panels, which consumed 430 million ounces last year. That does not include electric vehicles. That does not include traditional industrial applications. That does not include investment demand. The numbers do not add up. The metal does not exist. Now you might be asking yourself why AI needs so much silver. And this is where most people do not understand what is actually being built right now. Every single AI data center requires massive amounts of silver, not because of the servers themselves, but because of the power infrastructure and cooling systems required to run them. These facilities consume incredible amounts of electricity. And efficient electrical connections require silver. The circuit boards, the high-speed connectors, the thermal management systems, they all use silver because nothing conducts electricity and heat better except gold, which is too expensive for industrial scale deployment. But it goes deeper than data centers. The AI revolution requires a complete rebuild of the electrical grid. You cannot run AI compute clusters on infrastructure designed for 20th century power loads. Smart grids, renewable energy integration, battery storage systems, and electric vehicle charging networks all require more silver per unit of infrastructure than the old copper-based systems. And every major economy is racing to build this infrastructure simultaneously. The United States, China, and Europe are all building at the same time. There is no taking turns. There is no waiting for the supply to catch up. The demand is happening now. So here is where Switzerland and UBS fit into this global crisis. Switzerland has positioned itself as the physical precious metals hub of Europe. The Swiss vaults hold metal not just for Swiss banks, but for sovereign wealth funds, central banks, and wealthy families from across the Middle East, Asia, and Europe. When UBS has a delivery problem, it sends a signal to all those other holders that maybe their metal is not as safe as they thought. And if those holders start demanding delivery, if they start moving metal out of Switzerland to other jurisdictions, it exposes the entire European silver market as undersupplied. This is why the next 72 hours matter so much, because UBS has to either find metal to cover their shortage, or they have to admit publicly that they cannot deliver. And if they admit it, every other allocated storage agreement in Europe becomes suspect. The trust that holds the entire precious metals banking system together evaporates. And once trust is gone, the only thing that matters is physical possession. That is when prices stop being determined by paper markets and start being determined by who has metal and who does not. We need to look at exactly how much silver AI actually needs and why the supply side cannot possibly keep up. Let me show you the exact numbers that are causing panic in Swiss boardrooms right now. Because when you see the actual data on AI silver consumption, you will understand why UBS cannot find metal at any reasonable price. The artificial intelligence build-out is not a gradual trend. It is an exponential explosion happening in real time, and silver sits at the center of it. According to the International Energy Agency, global AI-related electricity consumption is projected to reach 1,000 terawatt hours by 2026. That is more than the entire country of Japan uses in a year. By 2030, some estimates put AI power consumption at 2,000 terawatt hours. Now, here's the critical part. Every terawatt hour of electricity generation, transmission, and consumption requires approximately 300 metric tons of silver for the infrastructure. Do that math. 2,000 terawatt hours times 300 tons equals 600,000 tons of silver needed just for the electrical infrastructure supporting AI. But wait, the Silver Institute report I mentioned said 500,000 tons. Why the difference? Because the Silver Institute is being conservative. They are only counting direct AI infrastructure. The 2,000 terawatt hour calculation includes the entire supporting ecosystem. The renewable energy plants needed to power these data centers. The battery storage facilities needed to smooth out supply. The upgraded transmission lines needed to move that much power. The smart grid controls needed to manage it all. When you add all of that together, you get to 600,000 tons. Either way, the number is impossibly large. Now let me show you why the supply side cannot possibly meet this. Global silver mine production has been essentially flat for 5 years. In 2020, it was 25,000 tons. In 2025, it was 26,000 tons. That is 4% growth over 5 years. Meanwhile, AI power demand is growing at 40% per year. You cannot have supply growing at less than 1% annually, while demand grows at 40%. The gap becomes a chasm very quickly, and it gets worse. 72% of silver comes as a byproduct of mining other metals: copper, lead, zinc, gold. Silver is rarely the primary target. It just comes along for the ride. This means you cannot simply open more silver mines to meet demand. You would have to massively increase copper and zinc production. But those industries have their own supply constraints. Copper mines take 7 to 10 years to develop. You cannot just flip a switch. The lead time is too long. The AI demand is happening now. The new mines that would supply it do not exist yet. Let me give you the real-world impact of this supply-demand imbalance. In November 2025, silver was trading at $71 per ounce. By January 2026, it hit $83. That is a 17% move in 2 months. Now compare that to historical norms. From 2015 to 2020, silver averaged $16 per ounce. It took 5 years to go from $15 to $25, but it took 8 weeks to go from 71 to 83. And the velocity of price movement is accelerating. And we have not even hit the main AI build-out phase yet. Here is what the major tech companies are actually doing right now. Microsoft just announced 3 new AI data centers in the United States with a combined power draw of 1.2 gigawatts. Google is building 4 facilities in Europe, totaling 800 megawatts. Amazon Web Services has 12 projects under construction globally. Meta is expanding existing facilities and building 6 new ones. And this is just the hyperscalers. Every major corporation is building AI infrastructure. Every cloud provider is expanding capacity. This is not hype. This is cranes in the ground and concrete being poured. Each of those data centers requires silver in quantities most people cannot even visualize. A single 1 gigawatt data center requires approximately 300 tons of silver for electrical infrastructure, cooling systems, and backup power. Microsoft is building 1.2 gigawatts. That is 360 tons for one project. Google is building 800 megawatts across 4 sites. That is 240 tons. Just those 2 companies, just those announced projects, need 600 tons. That is more than 2% of annual global mine production consumed by 7 buildings. Now multiply that by every tech company on Earth. Then add in the fact that China is building AI infrastructure at twice the pace of the United States. Then remember that none of this includes the 500 gigawatts of new solar panel capacity being installed this year, which requires another 4,000 tons of silver. Then add electric vehicles. Then add 5G network densification. Then add the smart city projects. The demand stack is so large that even if every silver mine on Earth doubled production tomorrow, it would still not be enough. This is why UBS has a problem that cannot be solved by simply buying silver on the open market. Because when they go to the market to buy physical metal, they are competing with Google. They are competing with Samsung. They are competing with the Chinese government. And those buyers do not care about price. They care about securing supply. When a tech company needs 300 tons of silver to complete a data center that will generate $5 billion in revenue, they will pay whatever it takes. They will pay $100 an ounce. They will pay $150 an ounce. The data center does not work without the silver. The price of silver is a rounding error compared to the project value. So here's what is happening in Switzerland right now. UBS knows they have allocated storage clients who will demand delivery. They know those clients will not accept cash settlement. They know they need to buy physical metal, but they also know that every ton they buy pushes the price higher. And the higher the price goes, the more their other clients start asking questions about their own allocations. It becomes a self-reinforcing panic. The attempt to solve the shortage exposes the shortage. And once the market realizes that a $4 trillion bank cannot source metal, every other institution starts hoarding. We need to look at what happens when the paper market breaks and how Switzerland became ground zero for the crisis. So, what happens next, and why the Swiss situation is the canary in the coal mine for the entire global silver market. Because what is playing out in Zurich right now is a preview of what will happen in London, New York, and every other financial center when the gap between paper promises and physical metal becomes impossible to hide. UBS is just the first domino, and that domino is already falling. Let me explain the mechanics of how the paper market breaks. Right now, the global silver market operates on a fractional reserve system just like banking. For every 100 ounces of silver that trade on exchanges like the COMEX or the LBMA, only a tiny fraction actually exists in physical form in the vaults. The rest is paper. Futures contracts, allocated accounts that are not really allocated, unallocated pooled accounts, ETF shares that may or may not be fully backed. The entire system works on the assumption that not everyone will demand physical delivery at the same time. But artificial intelligence demand breaks that assumption. Because tech companies building data centers do not want paper silver. They cannot install a futures contract into a circuit board. They need physical metal delivered to their manufacturing facilities. And when you have Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Samsung, and Huawei all demanding physical delivery simultaneously, the fractional reserve system collapses. The ratio of paper claims to physical metal gets exposed. And that is exactly what UBS is experiencing right now on a smaller scale. According to estimates from metals analysts, the paper to physical ratio in silver is approximately 250 to 1. That means for every ounce of physical silver, there are 250 claims on that same ounce through various financial instruments. Now think about what happens when just 10% of paper holders demand physical. 250 claims times 10% demand equals 25 people trying to claim the same 1 ounce of metal. 24 of them do not get it. That is a delivery failure. That is a default. And defaults destroy confidence in the entire system. Switzerland is ground zero because Swiss banks have marketed themselves for decades as the haven for physical precious metals storage. Wealthy families, sovereign wealth funds, and institutions paid premium fees specifically to have their metal in Swiss vaults under Swiss legal protection. But if UBS cannot deliver allocated metal, it means the entire Swiss precious metals storage industry becomes suspect. If it can happen at UBS, it can happen at Credit Suisse, it can happen at Julius Baer, it can happen at any of the private vaults. And once that trust evaporates, the metal starts flowing out of Switzerland entirely. We are already seeing signs of this. In December 2025, Switzerland exported 1,200 tons of silver. That is the highest monthly export figure in 14 years. Metal is leaving. But here's the problem. Switzerland only produced 18 tons of silver from mining last year. Almost all of those 1,200 tons came from existing stockpiles and refinery operations processing recycled material. Those stockpiles are not infinite. Every ton that leaves is one less ton available to cover the UBS shortage or any other shortage that emerges. Now, let me show you what the timeline looks like based on current AI build-out schedules. In 2026, the major tech companies have committed to bringing online approximately 15 gigawatts of new AI data center capacity. At 300 tons per gigawatt, that is 4,500 tons of silver needed just for those projects. But 2026 is the slow year. In 2027, the build-out accelerates to 30 gigawatts. That is 9,000 tons. In 2028, projections show 50 gigawatts. That is 15,000 tons. And remember, this is only about data centers. This does not include solar, EVs, or any other industrial demand. Compare those numbers to the supply. Global mine production, 26,000 tons per year. Recycling adds another 6,000 tons. Total annual supply is approximately 32,000 tons. But existing industrial demand already consumes 28,000 tons. That leaves 4,000 tons for investment, coinage, and new demand. But AI alone needs 4,500 tons in 2026. The math does not work starting this year, not in 5 years, not in 10 years, right now. So what does this mean for the price? When demand structurally exceeds supply by this magnitude, price has to rise until demand is destroyed or new supply is created. But you cannot destroy AI demand. Tech companies will pay whatever it takes because the alternative is not building the infrastructure that generates billions in revenue. And you cannot create new supply quickly. Mines take a decade to develop. So price becomes the only variable that can be adjusted. And it has to adjust upward until equilibrium is reached. Some analysts are now publishing price targets that sound absurd until you do the math. If AI needs 15,000 tons annually by 2028, and mine supply can only grow to 28,000 tons, you need recycling and above-ground stocks to make up the difference. But above-ground investment stocks are only 1.3 million tons total. If you drew down 200,000 tons over 4 years to feed AI demand, you would deplete 15% of global above-ground stocks. That has never happened in modern history. The price required to make holders sell that much metal could easily be triple-digit, $150, $200, maybe more. Here is what those who understand the supply mathematics are doing right now. They are not waiting for the UBS situation to become public. They are not waiting for the price to confirm the shortage. They are securing physical metal while it is still available at these prices, because once the paper market breaks, once the first major institution publicly fails to deliver, the premium for physical over paper will explode. In a shortage, paper promises become worthless. Only physical metal has value. The 72-hour window I'm talking about is not about a specific deadline. It is about the window before the UBS situation becomes widely known. Right now, this is still contained to Swiss banking circles and industry insiders. But the moment it hits mainstream financial media, the moment Bloomberg or Reuters runs a story about UBS silver delivery problems, the race begins. Every allocated account holder everywhere will start demanding audits. Every institution will start hoarding. And the price will gap up in a way that makes the recent move from 71 to 83 look like nothing. This is not speculation. This is math. 500,000 tons demanded by 2030. 32,000 tons supplied per year. The gap is unbridgeable at current prices. The only question is how fast the market reprices to reflect the reality. Those who understand this before it becomes obvious will benefit. Those who wait for confirmation will be buying at prices that reflect the shortage after it is undeniable. This is one of the most critical supply-demand imbalances developing in commodity markets right now. If you found this breakdown valuable, subscribe so you do not miss what happens as this unfolds. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from and whether you think the AI silver shortage is real or overblown. The data is clear. The question is whether you understand it before everyone else does.